Fading colors, Priya Malhotra stared at the half-empty coffee mug on her kitchen counter, her reflection distorted in the cooling liquid. Somewhere in the distance, the washing machine hummed its familiar rhythm, a sound that had become the background music to her life. At 36, she had mastered the art of disappearing into routines. Breakfast for the children, lunches packed, house cleaned, dinner prepared. The checklist of her existence had grown shorter with each passing year. 15 years ago, she had been Priya Malhotra, the promising young artist whose watercolor landscapes had earned her a small but devoted following in the local arts community. Now she was simply Mrs. Malhotra, mother of Rohan and Anjali, wife of Vikram, the respected structural engineer whose firm was responsible for half the modern buildings in their growing suburban town. Mom. "Have you seen my blue science folder?" Rohan's voice echoed down the stairs, breaking Priya's momentary trance. "Check the living room table," she called back, her voice carrying the practiced patience of a woman who had answered 10,000 such questions. She tucked a strand of her plain, straight hair behind her ear. When had she stopped wearing it loose? When had she stopped caring? The morning proceeded with its usual efficiency. Lunches distributed. Children herded into the car, quick kisses on foreheads, reminders about after-school activities. Vikram had left before dawn for an early meeting, his side of the bed already made when Priya woke. His note on the refrigerator was predictable. "Long day ahead. Don't wait up. Love you." 3 words that had once made her heart race now felt like a signature, a formality at the end of a business email. After dropping the children at school, Priya found herself driving past the old Community Arts Center. The banner outside announced a new exhibition, Emerging Voices in Contemporary Art. She slowed the car, a faint pull in her chest. When was the last time she had held a paintbrush? The half-finished canvas in the garage had gathered 2 years of dust, covered by a sheet like a body awaiting burial. Back at home, Priya moved through her chores with the efficiency of muscle memory. Laundry folded, bathrooms cleaned, chicken marinating for dinner. She caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Simple cotton shirt, faded jeans, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. There was nothing wrong with her appearance. She looked like any other busy mother, clean, presentable, unremarkable. In the afternoon lull before the children returned, she found herself in the garage, standing before the covered canvas. With hesitant fingers, she pulled back the sheet. Dust particles danced in the beam of light from the small window. The painting, a scene of mountains reflecting in a still lake, was better than she remembered. The technique was there, but something was missing. It lacked the vibrancy, the emotional resonance of her earlier work. Her phone rang, jolting her back to the present. It was Vikram. "Hey," his voice sounded distant, distracted. "Just wanted to let you know I invited Rajesh and his wife over for dinner Saturday. The promotion is almost locked in, and he's the final decision-maker." Priya closed her eyes. Another dinner party. Another night of smiling and serving while Vikram discussed projects and prospects. "Sure," she said. "I'll plan something nice." "Great. Thanks, Pry. You're the best." The nickname, shortened further in his haste, clicked off before she could respond. When had they stopped having real conversations? When had she become an extension of his career, a pleasant domestic backdrop to his professional ascent? That evening, after the children were in bed and the house had settled into its nighttime quiet, Priya found an old sketchbook in the back of her closet. The pages were filled with quick studies, faces, hands, landscapes, rendered with confidence and joy. On the last used page, dated nearly 7 years ago, was a self-portrait. The woman in the drawing looked out with bright eyes and a slight smile, her hair loose around her shoulders, a paintbrush held like a wand between her fingers. Priya touched the page gently, as if it might dissolve under her fingertips. That woman seemed like a stranger now, someone she had known once in another life. She closed the sketchbook and returned it to the closet. But something had shifted inside her, a small stone dislodged, causing ripples across the still pond of her existence. As she lay in bed that night, listening to Vikram's late key in the door downstairs, Priya made a silent promise to the woman in the drawing. She wasn't sure what it meant yet, but for the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something beyond resignation. It wasn't quite hope, not yet, but it was a recognition, a small, quiet acknowledgement that perhaps she was still there, underneath it all, waiting to be remembered. The invitation, the dinner party with Rajesh and his wife Nandini, had gone exactly as expected. Priya had prepared an elaborate spread of Vikram's favorite dishes, smiled at the right moments, and refilled wine glasses with practiced grace. As the evening wound down, Nandini had lingered in the kitchen, while Priya arranged dessert on delicate plates. "This is a beautiful home," Nandini commented, her gaze traveling over the spotless countertops and tasteful decor. "You've created such a warm space." "Thank you," Priya replied with the automatic politeness she reserved for such compliments. Nandini leaned against the counter, studying Priya with unexpected interest. "Rajesh mentioned that Vikram said you used to be an artist. Do you still paint?" The question landed like a pebble in still water. "Not really," Priya answered, arranging sliced mangoes in a fan pattern. "Not for years, actually." "That's a shame," Nandini said, and something in her tone made Priya look up. "I run an art therapy program at the community center. We're having a special workshop retreat next weekend, 3 days at River Valley Lodge. We had a cancellation, and I've been trying to fill the spot." Priya nearly dropped the serving spoon. "Oh, I couldn't possibly... Why not?" Nandini's directness was startling. "From what I see, you run this household with military precision. Surely it can survive 3 days without you." Later that night, after the guests had gone and Vikram had retreated to his study to review documents, Priya stood at their bedroom window, turning Nandini's business card over in her fingers. 3 days away, 3 days to herself. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying. "What are you looking at?" Vikram asked, appearing in the doorway. He looked tired but satisfied. The dinner had gone well. Rajesh had dropped hints about the promotion. "Nandini invited me to an art retreat next weekend," Priya said, the words tumbling out before she could reconsider. Vikram's eyebrows rose slightly. "Art retreat? Like painting?" "Yes, it's at River Valley Lodge, 3 days." He looked genuinely confused. "But what about the children? And I have that conference call with the Singapore team on Sunday. Rohan has that sleepover at Arnav's. And Anjali could stay with my sister," Priya said, surprised at how quickly the logistics had assembled themselves in her mind. "And you've managed conference calls without me before." Something flickered across Vikram's face. Surprise, perhaps, at her unusual persistence. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I suppose it could work. Is this something you really want to do?" The question hung between them. Was it? After years of putting everyone else's needs first, the idea of claiming time for herself felt almost transgressive. "Yes," she said quietly. "I think it is." The week leading up to the retreat passed in a flurry of preparations. Priya wrote detailed instructions for Vikram and her sister, packed and repacked her small suitcase, and dug out her old art supplies from the garage. The night before her departure, she found herself standing before her closet, realizing with a pang that she owned nothing that felt like an expression of herself anymore. Everything was practical, muted, chosen for durability and ease. In the back of a drawer, she found a forest green scarf with silver embroidery that she'd bought on a trip before the children were born. On impulse, she wrapped it around her neck and looked in the mirror. The color brought out flecks of gold in her brown eyes that she had forgotten were there. The next morning, as she loaded her suitcase into the car, Vikram stood in the driveway looking slightly lost, as if he was just realizing she was actually leaving. "You have all the numbers? And the schedule?" Priya asked for the 3rd time. Yes. We'll be fine," Vikram assured her, though his furrowed brow suggested otherwise. "But are you sure about this? It's been a long time since you've done anything with art." Priya felt a flicker of doubt, but pushed it away. "That's the point, isn't it?" As she drove away, she caught a glimpse of Vikram in the rear-view mirror, standing in the driveway with a perplexed expression. For the first time in years, she was doing something unexpected, something solely for herself. The realization was both terrifying and oddly freeing. The River Valley Lodge appeared after a 2-hour drive, a sprawling wooden structure nestled against the backdrop of pine-covered hills. As Priya parked her car, she saw a group of women of various ages gathering on the wide front porch, art portfolios and bags in hand. Her stomach clenched with anxiety. What was she thinking? She didn't belong here. These were real artists, people who hadn't abandoned their talents. Just as she was considering starting the car again, there was a tap on her window. Nandini stood there smiling warmly. "You made it," she said, as Priya reluctantly rolled down the window. "For a moment there, I thought you were going to drive away." Priya laughed nervously. The thought crossed my mind. "Everyone feels that way at first," Nandini said, opening the car door. "Come on." The first step is the hardest. With a deep breath, Priya stepped out into the crisp autumn air, the scent of pine and possibility swirling around her like a forgotten perfume. Canvas of discovery. The main room of River Valley Lodge smelled of pine, coffee, and the distinctive tang of oil paints. 12 easels formed a circle in the center, each accompanied by a stool and a small table of supplies. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the valley stretched out like a living painting, the river cutting a silver path through forests, beginning to hint at autumn colors. "Welcome, everyone," Nandini addressed the group after they had settled with their morning coffee. "This weekend isn't about creating masterpieces. It's about reconnecting with your art, with yourself, and with each other." Priya sat slightly apart from the others, cradling her mug like a shield. The woman next to her, a silver-haired dynamo named Jasmeet, who had introduced herself as a retired physics professor, leaned over. "First time?" she asked with knowing eyes. "Is it that obvious?" Jasmeet chuckled. "You have the same look I had 3 years ago when my daughter dragged me here after my husband died. Like you're waiting for someone to discover you're an imposter and ask you to leave." Priya smiled despite herself. "That's exactly how I feel." "The secret is," Jasmeet whispered conspirationally, "we're all imposters here. That's the point." The first exercise was deceptively simple. Using only 3 colors, paint how you feel at this moment. Not what you see, not what you think, but what you feel. Priya stared at her blank canvas, paralyzed. How did she feel? She had spent so long suppressing her feelings, prioritizing responsibilities, that she wasn't sure she remembered how to identify them anymore. Around her, brushes were already moving across canvases. With trembling fingers, Priya picked up her brush and dipped it into the blue paint. "Just start," she told herself. "Don't think." The first stroke was hesitant, a thin blue line curving across the white space. The second was stronger. By the 5th stroke, something was happening. Her hand was remembering what her mind had forgotten. She added patches of deep purple, then splashes of a vibrant teal that reminded her of the glass bangles her grandmother used to wear. 2 hours passed without Priya noticing. When Nandini called for a break, she stepped back from her canvas, startled by what had emerged. It wasn't technically brilliant. Her skills were rusty, but it was honest. Swirls of blue and purple dominated the canvas, but at the edges, that vibrant teal was pushing through like spring growth after a long winter. "That's very powerful," came a voice behind her. A woman named Divya, whose intricate henna designs on hands and arms marked her as a Mehndi artist, studied Priya's canvas with genuine interest. "There's movement here, from darkness toward something brighter." At lunch, Priya found herself drawn into conversation with 3 other women. Jasmeet, the retired professor, Divya, who had left a corporate career to pursue her art, and Zara, a young mother who painted late at night while her twins slept. They spoke of art, yes, but also of the negotiations all women make with themselves and the world, the parts they set aside, the dreams deferred, the slow reclamation of selfhood. "My husband doesn't really understand why I need this," Zara confided as they walked along the river during the afternoon break. "He's supportive, but he thinks of art as a hobby, not a necessity." Priya nodded. "Vikram's the same way. He values what I do for our family, but I don't think he sees me beyond that anymore. Maybe because I stopped seeing myself beyond that, too." That evening, after a dinner filled with laughter and wine, They gathered around a fire pit under the stars. Nandini invited each woman to share a memory of when they first felt connected to art. When Priya's turn came, she surprised herself with the story that emerged. "I was 9, she began softly. My father had just lost his job and there was so much tension in our house. I would escape to the roof with my notebook and pencils. One day I drew the sunset, not just the colors, but how it made me feel to be free up there while everything below was falling apart. My art teacher saw it and entered it in a district competition without telling me. When it won, my father cried. It was the first time I understood that art could be more than escape. It could be transformation." The next day's exercises pushed them further. They painted blindfolded, guided only by music and instinct. They created collective murals, adding to each other's work without judgment or hesitation. They sketched outdoors, letting the landscape guide their hands. By the third day, Priya's final piece was emerging. A canvas dominated by a woman standing at the threshold of an open door, light spilling around her silhouette. The brushwork was confident, the colors rich and complex. It wasn't perfect, but it was truthful. As she added the final details, she realized she was painting not just who she had been or who she was, but who she might become. On the final evening, they held an informal exhibition, displaying their work throughout the lodge's main room. Walking among the canvases, Priya was struck by the raw honesty in each piece, the visual language of women in various stages of becoming. Nandini found her standing before her threshold painting. "What will you do with this when you go home?" she asked. Priya considered the question. "Hang it somewhere I can see it every day," she said finally. "As a reminder." "A reminder of what?" "That doors don't just close," Priya answered, surprising herself with the clarity of the realization. "They also open." Brushstrokes of change. The house was eerily quiet when Priya returned on Sunday evening. For a moment she stood in the entryway, listening to the familiar sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Everything was exactly as she had left it, yet something had shifted. Or perhaps, she realized as she set down her bags, it was she who had shifted. Evidence of Vikram's bachelor weekend with Anjali was scattered throughout the house. Pizza boxes stacked neatly by the recycling bin, a half-completed puzzle on the coffee table, Anjali's unicorn socks forgotten under the couch. Priya moved through the rooms, not immediately cleaning up as she normally would, but observing, as if seeing her home through a new lens. Her paintings and art supplies still sat in the car. She wasn't quite ready to bring them in, to integrate this rediscovered piece of herself into the fabric of her daily life. It required a courage different from the one she had found at the retreat. The sound of a key in the lock announced Vikram's return with Anjali from her ballet lesson. "Mom!" Anjali's voice rang through the house as she burst through the door, flinging herself into Priya's arms with the full-body enthusiasm of a 10-year-old. "Did you paint amazing pictures? Did you become famous? Can I see?" Over Anjali's head, Priya's eyes met Vikram's. He looked tired, his usually crisp button-down wrinkled, his hair slightly disheveled. "Welcome home," he said, and she could hear the genuine relief in his voice. "How was it?" "It was—" Priya searched for words that wouldn't diminish the experience. "It was transformative. Later that night, after Anjali was in bed and Rohan had been picked up from his friend's house, full of stories about their weekend adventures, Priya finally brought her canvases inside. Vikram watched from the doorway as she carefully leaned them against the wall in their bedroom. "These are really good, Pri," he said, studying the threshold painting with genuine surprise. "I mean, I knew you could paint, but they have something. Feeling." Priya felt a warmth spread through her chest at the unexpected validation. "Thank you. So what happens now?" Vikram asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "With your art, I mean." It was a fair question. What did happen now? The retreat had reawakened something in her, but real life. Lunches to pack, meetings to attend, laundry to fold, waited impatiently at the edges. "I'm not sure yet," she answered truthfully, "but I need to make space for it. For me." The next morning, instead of immediately starting her usual routine, Priya sat at the kitchen table with her sketchbook, while the family rushed around her. She drew quick studies of Rohan gulping cereal, Anjali searching frantically for her science project, Vikram checking emails on his phone. They cast curious glances her way, but adapted to the small change in their orbit. "Mom's sketching us," Anjali announced importantly to her brother. "We're her muses." "Whatever," Rohan muttered, though Priya caught him straightening his posture slightly. Over the next few weeks, small changes accumulated. Priya converted a corner of the guest room into a makeshift studio. She signed up for a weekly painting class at the community center. She let the children make their own lunches 2 days a week. The results were questionable nutritionally, but they took pride in the responsibility. Most significantly, she began saying no. No to heading the school fundraiser, no to hosting Vikram's department dinner, no to the endless list of tasks that had filled her days without filling her spirit. Each refusal was difficult, edged with guilt, but also strangely liberating. She said yes, too. Yes to Anjali's request for art lessons, which became a Saturday morning ritual between them. Yes to a local gallery's call for submissions, entering a small watercolor that, to her shock, was accepted. Yes to joining a group of community artists who painted outdoors each Wednesday morning, capturing the changing seasons in bold strokes of color. The changes extended beyond art. She let her hair grow longer and took more care with her appearance. Not to impress others, but because it pleased her to feel connected to the woman she had once been and was becoming again. She rediscovered old music she had loved, playing it loudly while she painted. She bought clothes in colors that made her feel alive. A crimson scarf, a blouse the same teal as the accents in her retreat painting. Vikram watched these changes with a mixture of confusion and interest. One evening, he found her in her studio corner working on a new canvas. "You're different," he said, leaning against the door frame. It wasn't an accusation, merely an observation. Priya set down her brush. "Is that a problem?" He considered this. "No," he said finally. "But I feel like I'm catching up to a conversation that started without me." It was the most honest exchange they'd had in years. Priya gestured for him to sit in the chair beside her easel. "I felt like I disappeared," she said simply. "Like I became a function instead of a person. Mother, wife, housekeeper, but not Priya anymore." Vikram was quiet for a long moment. "I never meant to make you feel that way," he said finally. "I know. And you didn't, not by yourself. I did it too. It was easier somehow to focus on what everyone else needed, until I couldn't remember what I needed anymore." He reached out, hesitantly taking her paint-smudged hand in his. "And now, do you know what you need now?" Priya looked at their intertwined fingers. Then up at his face, the face she had loved for 15 years, through joy and hardship, through all the small betrayals of daily life and the profound intimacies that balanced them. "I need to be whole," she said. "And I need you to see me, really see me. Not just what I do for you and the children, but who I am." "I'm trying," he said, and she could see that he was. "You should hang your threshold painting in the living room, where everyone can see it." It was a small gesture, but significant. The next day, Priya hung the painting in the most visible spot in their home, where light from the western windows illuminated it in the late afternoon. Every time she passed it, she felt a quiet affirmation. "This is who I am becoming. This door is open." The unveiling 6 months after the River Valley retreat, Priya stood in the small gallery space at the Community Arts Center, surrounded by 20 of her paintings. From vibrant abstracts to delicate watercolor landscapes, from bold acrylics to intimate portraits, the collection represented her journey of rediscovery. Nandini had suggested the exhibition, but Priya had curated it herself, selecting pieces that told the story of her reawakening. The threshold painting held the central position, now refined and expanded into a larger canvas. The woman's face was partially visible now, turning toward the light with an expression of quiet determination. Priya had titled the exhibition, "Becoming Visible," a phrase that had come to her one morning as she watched the sun gradually illuminate her garden. "Are you nervous?" Jasmeet asked, appearing at her elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. The retired professor had become a close friend and mentor, her straightforward wisdom a touchstone during moments of doubt. "Terrified," Priya admitted, accepting the glass gratefully. It's one thing to paint for myself, another to invite the world to see it. That's the final threshold, Jasmeet said, nodding toward the central painting. Allowing yourself to be seen. The gallery was filling quickly. Zara and Divya arrived with bouquets of wildflowers. Several artists from the Wednesday morning group came, along with neighbors, parents from the children's school, and even a few of Vikram's colleagues. Priya's sister moved through the crowd, proudly pointing out details in various paintings to anyone who would listen. Rohan and Anjali had dressed up for the occasion, both uncharacteristically subdued in the formal atmosphere. Anjali clung to Priya's hand, wide-eyed at the attention her mother was receiving. "You're famous," she whispered, and Priya laughed, feeling the tension ease from her shoulders. "Hardly," she whispered back. "But it's nice to share what I love, isn't it?" Vikram was the last to arrive, coming directly from an important client meeting. He had texted apologies for his potential lateness, but had promised to be there. As the minutes ticked by, Priya felt a familiar disappointment rising. She pushed it down, focusing on the conversations around her, the genuine interest people were showing in her work. Then he was there, standing at the entrance in his business suit, scanning the room for her. When their eyes met, he smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes, not the polite expression he wore for professional gatherings. He made his way through the crowd to her side. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said, kissing her cheek. "The traffic was terrible." "You're here now," she said, meaning it. In the past, she might have harbored resentment at his lateness, added it to the mental tally of moments when work had taken precedence. Now she simply appreciated his presence. Vikram looked around at the gallery, at the crowd of people admiring Priya's work. "This is incredible," he said, genuine awe in his voice. "I knew you were talented, but this is extraordinary." He stood before the threshold painting, studying it with an intensity that made Priya hold her breath. After a long moment, he turned to her. "It's you, isn't it? Stepping into the light." The simple observation, so accurate and yet so unexpected from him, brought tears to Priya's eyes. "Yes," she managed. "It's me." Vikram took her hand, his fingers warm against her skin. "I see you," he said quietly. "I see you now." The gallery director called for everyone's attention, preparing to give a short introduction to the exhibition. As the crowd quieted and gathered near the front, Vikram kept hold of Priya's hand, standing proudly beside her. The simple gesture, public, unambiguous, supportive, felt like the closing of a circuit. An acknowledgement of her place in the world not just as an extension of him or the children, but as herself. The evening passed in a blur of conversations. Congratulations and even a few red sold dots placed beside paintings. As the crowd thinned and the event wound down, Priya found herself standing alone before the threshold painting, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. "Ready to go home?" Vikram asked, appearing at her side with her coat. "Almost," she said. "Just one more minute." In the quiet gallery, Priya looked at her painting, at the woman stepping through the doorway into light. 6 months ago, that light had seemed distant, almost unattainable. Now she stood in it, warming herself in its glow. "What are you thinking?" Vikram asked, watching her expression. "I'm thinking about the woman I was when I started this painting," Priya said. "How scared she was to take up space, to have needs, to be seen. And now?" Priya turned to him, seeing the man she had first fallen in love with, the one who had looked at her art with wonder, who had believed in her talent before she fully believed in it herself. Somewhere along the way, they had both forgotten that part of their story. Now they were writing a new chapter together. "Now I'm not afraid anymore," she said. "Not of being seen, not of taking up space, not of shining." As they walked out into the cool evening air, arm in arm, Priya felt a profound sense of rightness. The journey hadn't been easy, and there would be challenges ahead. Balancing her rediscovered passion with family responsibilities, navigating the changing dynamics of her marriage, continuing to grow as an artist. But she had crossed the threshold. She had become visible. To herself, to Vikram, to the world. At home, the children already asleep under their grandmother's watchful eye, Priya and Vikram stood in the quiet living room. The threshold painting would join them tomorrow, claimed by Vikram as his anniversary gift to her, a permanent reminder of her transformation. "You know what Anjali said to me at the gallery?" Vikram asked, loosening his tie. "She said, 'Daddy, Mom glows now,' like she has lights inside her." Priya smiled, touched by her daughter's perception. "Out of the mouths of babes." "She's right, though," Vikram said, his voice soft in the dim light. "You do glow. It's not just how you look, though you're more beautiful than ever. It's something deeper. You're fully present now, fully alive. It's—" He searched for the right word. "It's breathtaking." He reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering on her cheek. It was a gesture from their early days, intimate and full of wonder. Priya leaned into his touch, feeling the connection between them strengthening, transforming into something new yet familiar. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. The real me." Vikram drew her close, his arms encircling her with a tenderness that spoke of rediscovery. "Thank you for becoming visible," he murmured against her hair. "For reminding me who we are." In that moment, holding and being held, Priya understood the true meaning of transformation. It wasn't about becoming someone new, but about remembering who you had always been beneath the layers of expectation and compromise. It was about bringing your whole self into the light, not just for others to see, but for your own recognition and celebration. She had walked in faded, walked out glowing. And in that glow, she and Vikram were finding each other anew, stepping together into the light of possibility.